Sometimes the best stories in golf aren't found on tour. You'll find them at the back of the range. And here's your host, Ben Adelberg.
And welcome to the back of the range. I am your host, Ben Adelberg. This is episode 181. I'm back home, well rested from an incredible experience at the 2021 Jones Cup Invitational. From top to bottom, from Mr. Jones and Mr. Stahl, the founding fathers of the Jones Cup, to the director of golf, John Wade, who was my guest on episode 180, Charlie Killian, the entire professional staff, Matthew Heckel, my partner in crime handling all of the social media content we created, dozens of volunteers, the rules officials from the Georgia State Golf Association, spotters on every hole, food and beverage, the housekeeping staff that took such good care of me while I was on site. Just an incredible experience, first class all the way around, already planning to return in 2022. Finally, what can I say about the players? They braved the elements. They, along with myself, learned firsthand about the traditional Jones Cup weather patterns. A couple of beautiful days with an absolutely horrid day of rain and wind mixed in. But I saw some phenomenal golf, an epic battle down the stretch on the back nine. You had Alex Fitzpatrick, Spencer Ralston, and Ludwig Aberg in the final round. I mean, Alex Fitzpatrick of Wake Forest, he's a former Walker Cupper. Pretty sure he's a lock to be on the team in 2021. Spencer Ralston, just a stalwart of University of Georgia. And then Aberg, the guy from Sweden who's at Texas Tech that goes on to win the tournament. And then in the penultimate group, you have Cole Hammer, Davis Thompson, and David Ford. Hammer, we know about his credentials. Davis Thompson's the number 2 ranked amateur in the world. And David Ford really looks like a kid that's going to make an impact at UNC Chapel Hill. Ultimately, Aberg pulled out a one-shot victory by making birdie on the final hole. What else can you ask for in any sort of golf tournament? Now, I had a chance to speak with him after the round, actually an exclusive interview inside the clubhouse of Ocean Forest Golf Club. So I'll put the link to that interview. It's over there on the Jones Cup Invitational Instagram page. Remember last week, told you to follow that. Keep following it because they're going to be pumping out content for weeks and months to come. But don't worry, you're going to get a full episode here at the back of the range featuring Ludwig Aberg very soon. As I said, rising star at Texas Tech all the way from Sweden. We'll talk about Sweden, Lubbock, Texas, how those two are related. He's already won 2 professional tournaments in Europe. The recent Wagger rankings came out. He is now the 10th ranked amateur in the world. Cannot wait to record that episode. It's going to be a fun one. As I mentioned previously, the Jones Cup had massive Walker Cup ramifications. Some players went up in the rankings, and some ultimately went down. The top 3 Americans after the latest Wagger rankings were posted on February 10th have been granted spots on the U.S. team. No surprise in seeing Davis Thompson from Georgia and Ricky Castillo from Florida getting 2 of those spots. DT was one shot away from getting into a playoff and possibly going back-to-back of the Jones Cup. He is definitely on form. Castillo did not play the Jones Cup, but the 3rd spot went to John Pock from FSU. He is back on the U.S. Walker Cup team. As you may remember, he went undefeated for the U.S. side in 2019, 3 big points in Hoylake for Captain Crosby. So along with Tyler Strafacci, the U.S. amateur champion, that's 4 spots on the team that are decided. Only 6 remain. And while I don't know specifically when the announcement for the full team will be made, I don't think we're going to be waiting very long. Walker Cup at Seminole is the first week of May. Hope you all are as excited for that as I am. Before I forget, make sure you're following along on Instagram, the Back of the Range Golf Podcast. You know I have plenty of hats and towels for sale. The face masks were a big hit at the Jones Cup. It's easy to find every single episode here. Go to the website, thebackoftherange.com. That will give you links to anything you need, hats, shirts, you name it. Before we get to this week's guest, I was going to make a special announcement. And now, unfortunately, due to very poor weather heading to the Houston area, it's just an announcement. I was planning on attending the University of Houston's All-America Collegiate Tournament this upcoming weekend in Humble, Texas. It's going to be held at the Golf Club of Houston. Well, unfortunately, due to some challenging weather heading into that area, I won't be heading there. Now, at this time, this episode is being released on Thursday morning, February 11th. The tournament is still on, but, we thought about it. Collegiate players wearing parkas and ski masks might not photograph very well. And hey, let's face it, I'm a candy-ass Floridian, and I can't handle all this cold. All right, there, I said it. So you'll hear at the end of this episode that I'm going to be in Houston for the tournament. Unfortunately, that's not the case, but rest assured, I'll be covering another collegiate tournament very soon. Something is already in the works. And, there are other tournaments in the state of Texas, and not just B tournaments, A tournaments. And how did I get hooked up with Houston in the first place? Well, that brings us to this week's guest. My guest on this episode is Jonathan Dismuke, Director of Golf, men's golf coach at the University of Houston. His story and his path to Houston is remarkable. How does a kid that grew up in Calhoun City, Mississippi, on a 9-hole golf course, make his way to Auburn as a player, Texas A&M as a national championship-winning assistant coach, and then finally to Houston to lead the most storied collegiate golf program in history? Well, we're going to find out right now. Coach, you're here at the back of the range. How are you?
Ben, thanks for having me on. I'm doing great.
Well, I'm glad that you are. We could find some time to talk a little college golf, especially at a place like University of Houston. We will definitely get into the history of collegiate golf at that fine institution, because you are at the top of the mountain as far as national championships go. But I have to ask you, before we get into your start in the game, let's talk a little bit about today, where we're basically seeing that collegiate golf is televised. As we're recording this, they're playing out in California in the Southwestern Invitational. Did you ever think you'd see a day where regular collegiate events are being televised like this?
Ben, it's obviously special. I mean, we've there's been a lot of coaches that have worked really hard on trying to promote the game and getting us to this point. And the Golf Channel has been working with us, obviously, starting with the NCAA championship and then having the East Lake Cup, and then now this event on TV. I mean, it's tremendous.
I love the fact that it's televised, but the only thing about this event, it's not their fault, obviously, and kudos, like you said, to the Golf Channel for televising it. But man, it is cold and it's blowing out there, and the scores are for the most part over par. There's a couple people that are going under par, but for the most part, it's just brutal out there. And I wish like there's a tournament, I believe in Timuquana, where these guys are going super low. I want to see that stuff televised. Off the top of your head, what's one tournament that would really fit into that nice pocket of showing just how good these collegiate golfers are and just would show a birdie fest? To your best recollection, can you think back to a tournament that would really showcase mid-60s all over the place?
Yeah, I mean, the quality of golf. I mean, obviously, that's a great point that you brought that up, because there's a lot of people that their first introduction to college golf will be this, and even some to the national championship to some degree. I mean, we play extremely difficult venues. I mean, Blessings was obviously very difficult. Concession, its nickname is Concussion.
Carson Creek.
Carson Creek. I mean, we're not playing pitch and putts,
right.
The golf course they're playing down in Florida right now for the event that you mentioned, Timuquana, I think it's the name of it. I've been on that golf course a long time ago, and it's not what I would consider a pitch and putt. But you look at the scoring there, and it is, they are heading south of south when it comes to the scoring, and but obviously there's certain events that lend themselves to that. Maui, we played Hawaii's event out in Maui, where they used to have the Champions Tour skins game. It's an awesome golf course. It's extremely scenic. Guys, make a ton of birdies there. It usually takes 30 some odd under to win. As far as getting the scenery right, as far as televising golf at an interesting time, I think that event would be well received for sure.
Yeah. I just don't like seeing the guys struggling. It's kind of a novelty when the pros get beaten up, and that's fine seeing them get the crap kicked out of them at like a U.S. Open or an Open Championship. But I I want to see these guys just, shooting 65s and just have people say, wow, okay, they really are that good.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt.
Yeah.
There's no doubt.
Well, at this point in our conversation, it's early, but a lot of my listeners are probably picking up the fact that you have a slight accent. So when did you come over from the UK to be the head coach at Houston?
No, that's funny. Yeah. I was born in the middle of nowhere in Mississippi and got into golf haphazardly. But golf's taken me a lot of different places, from the backwoods of Mississippi to Auburn University to around the country and some interesting places in the world playing professional golf. And then I decided to get in coaching and spent a couple years at Ole Miss. Spent a great year at Texas A&M in 08 and 09 and won the national championship. And then about a week after getting back, from the national championship, I got a call from University of Houston, and we were able to come to agreement by the end of that summer. And I've been here since 2009.
So middle of nowhere, Mississippi, let's be a little more specific. We're talking about Calhoun. It's basically halfway between Jackson, Mississippi and Memphis, Tennessee. But you're right, about a population of 15,000. How do you get into the game of golf in Calhoun, Mississippi?
Yeah, you missed the comma there. That's about 1,500.
Okay. Well, I think that's right. Yeah. Well, there's Calhoun County and then Calhoun City. So is it which is which here?
Yeah, I grew up in Calhoun City,
okay.
Which is a metropolis by some standards. So it definitely an interesting place to grow up.
Okay.
It was primarily a farm community, not a lot of golf. I mean, there was a 9-hole golf course, with no driving range, no real practice facilities. I didn't really start playing golf until I was like 14. So I kind of came to the game late. I played a bunch of other sports, but just kind of got the golf bug. I had a great group of guys that I played golf with, all older guys, but they were, very competitive. They played golf all the time, and you were always playing for something. So
it's
you had
the best
to
way. It's the best way, isn't it? When you just get, and I'm guessing none of them are relatives at all. It's just like they're basically just, in their 50s, and I'm guessing this is all a guess, but I'm guessing they're like in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, and they just basically adopt you and teach you how to basically play like a man when you're like you said, 14 years old at a golf course.
It was a great learning tool for me and a great educator for me. Starting out in the game, it wasn't like we were playing for a lot of money, but it was enough to keep your interest, enough to for you to have to show up, and that's a great recipe and a great environment for development.
You played your collegiate golf at Auburn, and as you said, get into the game rather late, but you win a couple Mississippi State championships and win a Greystone Invitational, and you had a really nice junior and amateur career leading into playing at Auburn. I got to ask you, it's funny, I just had Grayson Huff on the podcast, who's a current Auburn Tiger that just won the Patriot All-America. And I hate to age you here, but you're coming up on the 20th anniversary of your team winning the SEC championship in 2002. What do you remember more about that? Not being in the lineup to win the SEC championship, or being in the lineup at the national championship?
That's an interesting question. I didn't miss a ton of events during my time there.
Right.
But I did miss that one, and it was obviously bittersweet. Like we won the tournament. Our guys played great, and it's a memory that I wish I could have been part of physically. But I was so happy for our guys. We had a really close knit team, and Coach had a tough decision to make, and I told him I didn't necessarily agree with him, but I said, I support your decision. It's 100% your call, because I think I had just finished. Maybe in the top 10, maybe like 5th or 6th or something at our home event, and I'd kind of been hurt that year. I had a jammed my SI joint in my hip running stairs in the stadium. I was not the most graceful athlete at Auburn University. and I had jammed my hip running down the stairs, and I really struggled that semester. And like I said, it's one of the few events that I missed over my last couple of years there. But it was obviously special for our team to win that event, and it was very theatrical coming down the stretch. And I like I said, I would have loved to have been part of it for sure. But we got back and we got to competing, and I think if I remember right, I played really good at Georgia State's event. It's kind of a event kind of after conference championship, in between conference and regionals that year, and I had a chance to win that event, and that was like
that got you back, yeah.
Kind of coming down the stretch. I think it was with Camilo Vajegas, and I think he ended up beating me by probably more than I like to remember, but I do remember that I was at least in the last group with him, and so that kind of got me a little more confident, and we went on and had a decent regional performance, kind of squeaked into the NCAAs that year. We had a really good driving team, and we played Karsten Creek, and Karsten Creek was the hardest driving golf course I have ever seen personally. And fortunately, the wind didn't blow that week, and we were around the lead for a long time, ended up finishing seventh, and it was a great way to cap off that junior year for me.
Yeah, and the other thing that I kind of peeked in to see how basically you finished, and how a lot of the guys on your team, I mean, Will Claxton was on that team, and it's funny, 2003, 2004, you're basically leading in every single category, whether it's stroke average and rounds under par. And this was really the strength of your collegiate career by from what I can tell. And I guess it kind of parlays into how you coach, and what you need to realize about college golf is where it takes some time for players to really, gather some steam and find everything that fits. Do you remember really how everything came into place that year?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I was definitely behind the eight ball. I remember getting to Auburn, and we had a bunch of guys on the team, and it was, we were shifting from quarters to semesters, and, the Title IX stuff was just starting to kind of come out a little bit. And I remember in about the second meeting of the year, kind of Coach Griffin came in and said, "Hey, listen, there's 16 guys on the team. We're signing 3 guys. We're graduating, 2 or 3 guys, and there's going to be," I think he said, I can't remember if it's 10 or 12 in the team the next year. Well, when you're the 15th or 16th guy on the list, and you hear that conversation, well, it's time to kick it in gear if you want to stick around.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was very fortunate that I had a really good relationship with Jason Duffner, who was a senior that year, and Roland Thatcher was day in, day out our best player. So, I really kind of connected those guys. They took me under their wing, even though that I was well behind from a physical standpoint, and those guys really, they challenged me day in, day out. I thought I had thick skin coming in there. My skin got really thick after my first year in dealing with those guys, because they're not necessarily the kindest bunch, but they definitely helped me from you just, like I said earlier, like showing up, having to compete. When I'd make a mistake, they were on me. So it was just a great learning environment if you were open to it. Now, everybody's not open to it. Everybody, is not, okay with, the criticism or even the competition at times. And for whatever reason, I've always been a competitor, and I've always enjoyed, being around people that were better than me. I feel like that's an opportunity to always learn if you can surround yourself with people that can do more than you. I don't mind, being on the come up on the back end of things. So that environment was great for me, and really, once those guys kind of graduated, because Duffner stuck around some, we brought in really good players behind them, like Lee Williams, who was, a Walker Cup guy, Will Claxton, played the PGA Tour for a little while. Stuart Moore was a great amateur. Jay Mundy was a really good amateur. We just had a lot of guys stacked up behind those guys that were really into golf. We weren't necessarily the most talented group, but we ate, slept, and breathed golf, and we were hard after it, pretty much every day.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm listening to what you're saying about how Duffner and Claxton and the other Roland Thatcher kind of getting in, basically making sure you have thick skin. And I'm guessing this is more about, it's not about, hey, you're not hitting it far enough and you're missing that putt. I'm guessing it's more about things like, hey, you have the pin is back left and you just missed it left and short side yourself. I'm guessing things like that, just simple course management and errors that are more mental than physical. I'm guessing those are the kind of things you're talking about.
Oh yeah, I mean Duffner's had such a great way about him. I mean, he comes across as like a kind of a super quiet guy, and he is, but by all normal standards, he is very introverted. But he's got this ability to deliver one-liners that are, I mean, when I tell you they sting, and he's got that goofy little voice, and you hit it long left to a back left pin, and he's just walking up and he just walks past you and goes, keep doing that, it's going to get expensive. Little things like that just always stick in the back of your mind. And just when you don't say a lot and then you say the right thing at the right time, it really stands out.
I'm trying to think back of players that burst on, win something big on the PGA Tour, and you think, how the hell did that happen? But I'm guessing that's something that you and your teammates probably saw out of him for quite some time. And I'm thinking about him like also, I mean, I think him and Keegan Bradley are pretty much joined at the hip just for their actually their rivalry in the PGA Championship, but also similar.
Right.
Nobody knows who Keegan Bradley is coming out of St. John's. I'm guessing
Right.
I'm guessing the same amount of people probably knew about Duffner coming out of Auburn.
Yeah, I mean, if you were in the know, you knew that he was a good player,
right?
But you probably didn't really have an appreciation of his ball control. I mean, I just remember playing worst ball with him. I mean, and you look. I mean, I would hit a tee ball in the right rough and hit one in the left rough, and I'd have to figure out. It'd take me 5 minutes to figure out which one was worse. And he could throw a napkin over his two tee balls, and just the sheer attrition of playing a game like worst ball with a guy that has that much ball control. I mean, it's a testament to his true ability.
Yeah. You leave Auburn, All America honors, all academic honors, and turn pro, as and most people do if they're playing at a D1 program at that level. They want to give it a shot. You play, go to Q school a couple of times, and I can't not. I mean, you played the Hooters Tour, and I swear somebody out there needs to grab Ted Potter and Chad Campbell and get a Hooters Tour podcast started, because the stories that must exist from that tour are legendary. I know you're not going to let me down here. I just know it. You got to have at least one story from the Hooters Tour.
Oh well, I have several that aren't probably appropriate for this podcast, but I'll give you a pretty good one.
Okay, good.
We were playing in. I can tell you several stories. I met my wife playing professional golf and stuff like that. I won't bore you with that, but I'll tell you the story about. There was a guy that did the yardage books. There was a guy named Willie Lanier. There's William Lanier, but I call him Willie. He's from Augusta. He did the yardage books for the PGA Tour, and he caddies. I can't remember who he's caddying for right now, but caddies on the PGA Tour. But his side gig was him and another guy, Marion Dancer, did the yardage books every week. So they were hand drawn, and Monday was a big day because he sold yardage books to the Monday qualifiers, and and that was pretty good little revenue stream. And we had played. I can't remember where we were playing, and we had driven up to Perdido Bay, which if you've traveled at all, that it's just outside of Pensacola and right on the Florida-Alabama line.
Yep.
And there's a famous bar there called the Floribama. Well, it was Sunday night. We, me and a guy named Brett Bonner, who played Auburn. He almost won the Mid Amateur a couple, year or so ago. And Jake Reeves, who's kind of works with a bunch of PGA Tour guys now. And us three, we were all staying together with Willie Lanier at Perdido Bay in this condo. And, we had all had a decent week, made a little cash or whatever. So I said, boys, we got to go. I got to show you the Floribama, because being from Alabama, I'd been there once before.
Sure.
So I take the guys out and we have a good time, and we come back and Willie Lanier is what I would call a trendsetter. He had one of those CPAP machines for sleep apnea way before they were popular. So he had already gone to bed because he's got a big day, on Monday. And so we decided to sneak in his room and steal his car keys and drive. We were staying at the golf course, and we drive his I think he had like a 93 or 94 Toyota Camry that had 200,000+ miles on it.
God.
And we pull it up right next to the first tee, and we take our white shoe polish, because you wore classics back then. You had to keep them polished.
Because there's a lot of media out there in the Hooters tour.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You want to look good, so you want to look like you at least get a new pair of shoes every 6 months or something.
Sure.
So we take the white shoe polish and we write low Monday qualifier wins, 1994, Toyota Camry, with 200 some odd thousand miles on it. And literally it is pulled up. When I tell you it is on the first tee, it is on the first tee.
Okay. Got it.
And so, we all go back and go to sleep, and Willie gets up the next morning and he is in a frantic. Well, what we didn't know is, like, a year before this, his car was stolen.
Okay. Perfect.
So he has he has basically a panic attack, and he's absolutely freaking out, and he's running around trying to find the deal or whatever. And we're just like, hey, just go to the pro shop and check the video or whatever. I'm sure they got video out there, and you'll probably see who got your car. Well, he rolls out there and he finds the car, and the guys that are running the Hooters tour or whatever obviously call us in, and they're like, hey, that's that was really funny, but don't do it again.
Conduct unbecoming, but yeah, that's funny as shit. So that's perfect.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I wish I was doing this podcast when the Hooters tour was around, because
oh my gosh,
I know.
Yeah. There are so many characters. I mean, literally, I could tell you, and I mean, I was as tame as a house cat,
Sure.
compared to some people and the guys I ran with. But that was definitely an interesting time in my life and in the low levels of professional golf.
Sure. Well, you've turned the page into becoming a college golf coach, and as you said, you're an assistant at A&M. You spent some time at Ole Miss. How did you get into it? I mean, I know this is really, it's such a passion in your life, and from where you started to where you are now with the University of Houston, I know you've climbed the ranks and had different experiences, but how did it become, instead of just like, hey, I need a job, as to this is kind of my calling, this is what I want to do? Do you remember maybe when the light kind of went off in your head and said, okay, this really is my passion?
Yeah, it was. I would say the one skill that I possess that has probably been a true asset to me in life in general is I've got a good way of networking, and just through kind of being at the right place at the right time. I actually, a good friend of mine that used to work for Titleist, Phillips James, encouraged me. He said, hey man, like, I think you'd be great at college coaching, and I think you should pursue it, and about a week later, Trey Jones, who's been a dear friend of mine from the day I met him when I was playing college golf in Auburn. I worked golf camp that he ran, and just has always been a kind of a guiding light for me in college golf and especially in coaching. Had a position open, and he interviewed me, and it was good for me. I didn't end up getting the job. Chris Malloy actually ended up getting the job, and but it was good for me to kind of reconnect and kind of wrap my mind around it a little bit, because I was still trying to play some. And then Ernest Ross, who was really good to me as a junior golfer. I mean, I didn't have the opportunity to play a lot of 18-hole golf courses even growing up. Like, I got to play Country Club of Jackson, maybe when I was, I don't know, maybe 15 or 16. I just won I think I was 16. I just won state junior that summer. And Ernest Ross and a couple members at Country Club of Jackson invited me and a couple other kids up to play golf. And I played there a handful of times and just had a good just a cordial relationship with Ernest. And when the job was open there, he hired me and just gave me that opportunity. And then I kind of leapfrogged that into the deal at A&M, and the rest has been history.
I love the story of just kind of finding your way. And then also, I think it's incredible that you win a state junior championship without really playing 18-hole rounds of golf as a kid. I don't think I've ever heard that ever.
Yeah. I mean, when I tell you my story is unique as far as the environment, but I wouldn't have traded it. Like, it was a great environment for somebody who started late.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't hanging out on the driving range. I mean, I might not have had 18 different holes to play, but I played, there wasn't many days that went by where I didn't play, somewhere between 36 and 54 holes. So it was, although it was non-conventional, it was a great environment.
Yeah. Is it 14 years at Houston or 9?
I think this is my 12th year.
12th, and then
12th season.
Yeah. So 12th season, and then it's the 8th where you're handling both programs, right?
Yeah. I mean, we started the women's program here, and we scaled it up. And I don't coach the girls day to day. We've got a very awesome staff that does it day to day, but I kind of, consult with them on some things. And that's been a very cool process to see that, to basically start that program from scratch at the most historic men's program of all time. So
yeah,
that was
yeah.
That's probably a whole podcast in itself.
Well, I mean, I'm glad you brought it up because, University of Houston, basically since the NCAA, I mean, it's really the first dynasty in the NCAA area. So after, basically for the last, I think about 80 years, Houston is at the top, 16 titles, and in basically a 29-year period. And we can start just at least we have to mention Dave Williams, basically, for people who don't know, almost a pioneer in the collegiate game. Right now, or back then, it was a lot of just matches, one school versus the other, 5-on-5, and it was match play, or however many it was, but it was match play. But now we have the 5-for-4 and stroke play, and 10, 15, 20 teams at a tournament. That really all started with Dave Williams. And I guess one of the things I wanted to ask you about taking the job at Houston is it's unique where I guess every recruit that goes into a collegiate program, they may be looking at, what is this school going to do for me? What is Houston going to do for me? I'm guessing that you need kids to understand what they need to do for Houston because of the legacy. This isn't just, going to school and playing a little golf. This is a big legacy that they're buying into.
Oh, absolutely. And when you mention a guy like Dave Williams, like, a lot of people don't realize this. I mean, Dave Williams he televised golf tournaments in Houston. You could watch college golf in Houston in like the late 1960s. I mean, he's really a pioneer as far as the game goes. I mean, this what we have today is directly related to some of the forward thinking that some guys like Dave Williams and Mike Holder and several other coaches that have all come before us. But what he accomplished here at the University of Houston is absolutely remarkable and should be held in the same regard as what John Wooden did, or what whoever Bear Bryant, and I'm not a big Alabama guy, being
I know that must have just gave
Auburn
you.
guy.
I can't believe you just said that. I mean, I can. You want me to edit that out? I don't want. I mean,
no,
leave it in.
You can leave it. You can leave it in there. I've got some people I tolerate that are associated with the University of Alabama. But yeah, when you look at guys like Saban and Bear Bryant, what they've done, I mean, Dave Williams should be held in the same regard. And there's obviously a lot's changed in college golf. I mean, there's so much parity now. I mean, when you look at even the however many years I've been associated with the game, I mean, things have changed so much, and it's just a testament of good quality people, thinking forward and really, putting the game first.
How much does it weigh on you? I mean, knowing what the legacy is, the 16 titles in 29 years. I mean, you're down in Texas, down in Houston. You got Austin and College Station north of you. Then you got a couple programs in Oklahoma, a little bit further north. LSU is just to the east of you. You have all these programs right around you. Mm-hmm. I mean, how much does that weigh on you? Where you want to get that 17th title?
Yeah, everything we do from a fundraising perspective, from a practice perspective, it all falls under what we call Project 17. So whether it's recruiting, like I said, every aspect of what we do falls under that umbrella. And Project 17 is all about putting us in a position to have that chance to win a 17th national championship and getting across the finish line. And for the better or the worse of me, I've never minded a challenge. And, this landscape is very difficult. I mean, we've got a lot of people that in our state and around our state, whether they're SEC schools, whether they're Big 12 schools, that have a high emphasis on playing golf at a championship level, and no matter how many kids play junior golf or whatever, like there's only so many kids that when you're talking about competing at that level that are capable. So the competitive landscape of recruiting is brutally difficult. We have to find the right kids. There's no two ways about it. But it's a at the end of the day, you don't just want a challenge, you want an admirable one. And I think helping this program get back to a level of conversation at the national level. We've been really good at times and we've struggled at times, but there's not a day that goes by that I don't have a very admirable challenge in front of me.
What I try and make sure that listeners, I say it all the time, but I'm very proud to say it, that a lot of parents of juniors listen to this podcast. Juniors listen to it. Juniors from all over the world, actually, whether they're in Costa Rica or they're in Finland. I mean, it blows me away how many juniors are listening. And one thing I want to make sure, whenever I talk to a collegiate coach, get a little bit of insight, a little bit of advice for them. What do you find is the biggest lesson that collegiate players need to learn as quickly as possible?
To me, your relationship to challenge and failure is the if you can learn that lesson fast, and you can understand that failing in something is not it's not final. And what I mean by that, it's okay. It's okay to put out a good effort and come up short, because I think a lot of times, like we're a little too protective as far as that goes. Like and at some level, whether it's a collegiate level or professional level, you're going to put a hell of an effort out, and you're going to come up short. And your relationship to that is going to determine like your ability to move forward. And sometimes that manifests itself in qualifying. Sometimes it manifests itself at, having a chance to win a golf tournament. Sometimes it manifests itself as, just making the team as a walk-on. But your relationship to failure and challenge, will directly determine your trajectory in life, because we're all going to come up short. And, like I said, at times, like, you've got to be, you're going to put it all out there, and it's going to hurt and it's going to suck. But, not being okay with failing. I mean, I'm not saying like you should pat yourself on the back for failing, but having a relationship to it to where you can learn from it and move forward.
Well, I'm glad you laid that out, because that is one thing that probably young people today are just not used to. They're not used to failing, and they want success as quickly as possible and don't know how to deal with failure. So I'm glad you brought that up. Can you pinpoint what your greatest joy as a coach thus far has been? And obviously you can, go to the national championship that you're part of at Texas A&M, but I'm kind of thinking that maybe there's another moment in your coaching career that, maybe doesn't have the glitz and glamour of a trophy attached to it. But can you think back to maybe what is maybe the greatest joy you've experienced that maybe a lot of people don't know about?
Oh man, that's a tough one, because I've been so fortunate. I've been so fortunate in this game. I've been very successful at times and won championships and things like that. And don't get me wrong, all those things are great. But looking back on things, I mean, there's obviously I'm in a interesting position to affect people in very positive ways and very negative ways. And I've always tried to respect that and know that I'm in that role. And I would say, there's probably not one scenario in particular, but there's always scenarios that happen, from time to time when players kind of come back to you and say, hey, listen, I was really struggling with this or that at that time. And you said something to me, and I don't know if it's, was, if you, knew what you were doing at the time, but, it really changed my outlook and it helped me, be who I am today. And, I've had that conversation. Like I said, I have it on a yearly basis, with someone. And for me, like those are some of the most rewarding things. I mean, like, I didn't get into this job, because it was, glamorous or anything like that. But I really felt like, it was kind of my calling to help guys, because I felt so. I benefited so much from this process. I mean, Mike Griffin gave me an opportunity, and without him and without Ryan Cabbage and several other people around me, I might be back in Mississippi growing sweet potatoes. So, which is a very admirable profession, by the way. Those guys do really well. But this game's been so generous to me, and I just felt, drawn to give back. And so I would have to chalk it up to some of those behind the scene conversations, that happen usually, several years after the fact. And, like I said earlier, my networking skills and the way I value relationships have been a asset to me personally and professionally. And, like I said, that's probably got to be some of the highlights for sure.
Yeah, well said. Obviously, 2020 is such a unique and frustrating year. Obviously, college golf pretty much shutting down across the country around, mid-March. I know a lot of conferences kind of handled it differently, but the end game was golf was over. There was not going to be a national champion. But now we're getting things started in the spring of 2021, and the one of the biggest tournaments that's of the spring is going to be the All-America, which you're hosting down in Houston. And really, this is a tournament, like we talked about earlier, that Dave Williams started. And we're releasing this episode, just a little bit before the beginning of that tournament. And, due to, I guess, the geographical limitations, so to speak, of different conferences and different teams, you really are going to have a hell of a turnout as far as what teams are. It's going to be a very highly ranked tournament. Can you talk a little bit about what you've had to do to prepare to host a tournament during, I guess, the new normal of life with COVID?
Well, it's definitely been interesting, and and outside of having to change everything every week, then it hasn't been all that complicated. But it seems like these things are a moving target at best, and the fields are it's like musical chairs at times with the field, and there's a lot of requirements to be able to play as far as the testing, and if you have a team that has someone to test positive, I mean, then you have to run the contact tracing. So you could easily have a scenario to where a 19 team field can be 13 or 14 teams. So what I would say is I'm probably more famous in college golf for hosting events. If you host enough events, you realize the best skill that you could probably have as someone that hosts events is to be able to hit curveballs. And this event will definitely throw some curveballs our way, but we've got a tremendous field. When you look at the All-American back in the day, it was one of the premier events, and it will be one of the premier events of this spring. We've got, a good crop of Big 12 teams. We've got A&M from the SEC. We got Louisville coming over from the ACC. We've got, ourselves, and we've got a lot of really good mid-major teams. I mean, Sam Houston State has got pretty much everybody back, and they've got a really nice program. Louisiana Monroe has got a really nice group of guys. So it's going to be an interesting field, a great opportunity for some of these mid-major schools, and an easy event for travel for a lot of these places. I mean, Houston, you can get to Houston for pretty much anywhere relatively easy.
Yeah.
And we got a golf course that's in great shape. Tournament course, Golf Club of Houston hosted the Shell Houston Open and the Houston Open for I think 17 years. It's going to be a terrific venue for college golf. We would love to have it on TV, but we got probably the second best option coming up as far as I'm concerned. We hired a guy that knows what he's doing as far as college golf and amateur golf goes, as far as creating content. So that should be really fun to display and hopefully grow the fan base.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I guess this is as good a time as any to let listeners know that, gosh, you're just, I don't know why you're sucking up. You don't need to do that, Coach. But yes, I will definitely be at the All-American Invitational doing photography, video work, and interviewing some of these players, and really looking forward to getting down there to seeing this great field and this great tournament. You mentioned, so thank you for that, and thank you for having me down there. And you mentioned, you mentioned University of Houston. Just we've talked, and I'm going to let you go on this one, but I have to ask this one question. There's a lot of great alums that have been through that program, and we can go down the line. I know Freddie Couples had a cup of coffee at the University of Houston back in the I believe it was the early '80s, or I know that Elkington was there, and we can kind of go down the line of all the different Fuzzy Zeller. I mean, just go on and on. But I have to ask you, there's this other guy that was there that didn't quite make it out on tour. His name's Jim Nance, but he's somehow found a way to make a career in the golf world. Everything sounds better coming from Jim Nance. If I ever got a phone call where, my car was stolen and my house burned down, I would want Jim Nance to be the one to tell me, because it would just sound better from him. A lot of players dream about having Jim Nance talk about them, at Augusta. What's it like when Jim Nance is calling a golf shot right in front of you as you're trying to take the club back, like maybe at Pebble Beach?
It's a great topic to bring up. I mean, one of the awesome things about my job is I've been able to connect with so many guys that have been so influential in the game, and if I started naming them all, I'd leave somebody out. But I've been so fortunate to have relationships with these guys, and these guys really kind of take me in and tell stories and just so many good stories from Dave Williams and from college golf back in the day. I mean, it's that could be a podcast of its own too. I mean, when you hear some of the stuff that went on back then. But we had a stretch that we were doing an annual, or about every other year we were going out to Pebble Beach and having a kind of a booster outing at Jim Nance's place, and we'd play Pebble, we'd play Spyglass, and we'd have dinner at Nance's house, and Nance would come out and he would make the call on number 7 at Pebble Beach,
Right.
or come out to Spyglass and make the call on one of the holes for all the the boosters that made the trip. And it was, you meet your heroes, and oftentimes they don't live up to the expectation you have in your head. But let me tell you, Jim Nance exceeds that expectation. So all that you're envisioning as far as like the voice and his ability to deliver the message, whatever that message might be, he is unbelievable. Such a generous man, such a thoughtful man. His attention to detail. I can tell you, we had, so one year we went out, and it was the first Sunday night that he had off in like 20 years. And we were at his house.
Oh, wow.
And so we're in his theater room, and we're watching the Chiefs, and I can't remember I don't remember who they were playing. But I do remember it was the Chiefs, because he was making some comments on Andy Reid's clock management. But he turns the volume off and calls the game without sitting in there. And this is, he wasn't prepared for it or anything, just kind of impromptu, cuts it off. And he wasn't doing it to show off.
But that's what everyone wants to see, though. I mean, yeah.
And when I tell you, like, the hairs on your arm stand up with how much this guy knows. I mean, he is, you can pick out whatever artist that you want, in any genre. And when I tell you, he's got that touch, that ability to deliver a message, that is, it's astonishing to see.
Now, why the hell didn't you get Nance for the All-America? I mean, now looking back, don't you think you might have made the wrong decision?
Well, he does have a calendar that's a little occupied from time to time.
I understand. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing that story and a lot of the other ones that you shared, and I think it's. But no, I'm thrilled you're able to share that story about Nance, and I can only imagine, because I mean, there's video of you hitting a shot at Pebble, and and he's right behind you calling it, and I'm thinking, how do you pull the club back when you're listening to that?
Well, the first shot that we didn't get this one on film, but the first shot he ever did, the video messed up, and I lipped out on number 7 for a hole in one.
Oh,
and so we didn't. It's not on YouTube, and I've actually got to find the video. It wasn't a good video or whatever, and then everybody was going crazy, so it was
a little bit jerky.
Yeah. And then, I'll send you a picture of this picture that I've got. Have you ever been to Pebble Beach?
I have not. So it's no, I've not been there quite yet. So
what I'll tell you about Jim Nance is he knows how to create a moment.
Right.
So another fundraiser that he would do, he basically do 2 things a year at Pebble. One was our deal. One was a deal he called the Calling, which was his wine or whatever. But it was a fundraiser for the Nance Alzheimer's unit here in Memphis. And he'd have people from all around. And so this particular year, Arnold Palmer was going to play in it, and he was going to it was going to be Arnold Palmer's last round of golf at Pebble Beach.
Oh, wow.
So, Jim, curates this whole thing. He hires a famous painter from the Carmel area, because it's full of really really great artists and stuff like that. So he hires this guy to do an oil painting of Arnold Palmer holding out on 18. And he's got a red sweat. I mean, like, Jim basically dressed him and told him, "Hey, listen, I want you to wear the whole deal or whatever."
Right.
And the picture turned out unbelievable. Well, then he commissioned the artist for 100 prints, and then recommissioned him never to print it again.
Oh.
So there's 100 prints. Each one of them are signed by the artist and by Arnold Palmer. All right. So he's got one of one hanging in his office. So at our deal, that was the main gift for the calling. For our deal, he had 2 left. All right. So there's, in his backyard, he's got a replica of number 7.
Right.
And so there was a professional division, and then there was a amateur division. So, the amateurs go or whatever, and one of my guys ends up winning the picture or whatever. And then they have the professional division. Well, I had no idea what was going on outside. I was inside talking to his assistant.
Uh-huh.
So I'm walking outside. Everybody's hit except for me. And Billy Ray Brown had hit it, up there to like 2 feet. So Billy Ray's like, she starts talking shit. He's like, "Oh, get Coach up there. He hadn't hit yet. Let's see what he's got." So you hit 2 shots or whatever. Well, I hadn't hit a ball or whatever, and I had a glass and a half, 2 glasses of wine. So I walk up there, and I'm looking at it or whatever, and I just ripped this like 56-degree wedge down there. And you play with like a limited flight ball, and I ripped it down there, and it lands like 2 feet, like past the hole, and backs up and hits the pin and almost goes in.
Oh.
And I just dropped the club and I walked off.
Oh my gosh.
So I've got number 2 of 100 of this print.
Oh my gosh. I was just going to ask if this ever went to an auction. That's where I thought you were going with this. I only want to know what those would go for.
There's no telling. I mean, at the time, Nance told me it's probably worth $30,000.
Uh-huh.
This was before Palmer passed away.
Sure.
So there's no telling what it's worth.
Wow. What a great story. Well, I can't thank you enough for the time. And again, really happy for it sounds like University of Houston is really in good hands. I'm happy that you guys are able to put together this All-America tournament. Glad to be there. Really looking forward to getting down there and seeing everyone. And we'll definitely do this again. It's been a long time. I'm glad we're able to get you here at the back of the range. And thanks so much. We'll do it again soon.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me on.
And there you have it. Special thanks to Coach Jonathan Dismuke from the University of Houston for being my guest here at the back of the range. Sorry I won't be seeing him, the Houston Cougars, and everyone else playing in the All-America Intercollegiate, but I know that everyone will be following along to see how that tournament shakes out. Don't forget, follow along on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Check out thebackoftherange.com for previous episodes and where you can get some merch, and we'll see you again next time here at the Back of the Range.